Alright guys, such comic again. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Dashy calls out the way the CDL is currently operating after all this drama in recent weeks about the online matches, the fact the Ravens were dominating, and even yesterday there was more drama between the Falcons and Ravens on exactly the way that plays out behind the scenes. Dashy says the way that the league sets these things up means that actually not playing from a facility gives you an advantage, and that is problematic in more ways than just one. Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to start with a couple of roster things. Formal was asked, how much would you have to get paid to play for Cloud9? It would have to be an awful lot of money to make that make any type of sense. C9, as I said yesterday, I still don't really understand their strategy here, going absolute bare minimum rock bottom, because yes, they do get the World Cup bag because they're part of the Pro League, but also what's the point? It's not much of a bag if you're getting slammed, right? So I'm not really sure what their long-term strategy is. Nasty tweeted out yesterday, this is ridiculous, honestly, GG Surge, just unacceptable. He looks like he's fed up with the team. Now, somebody replied to him who has since deleted it, which is why it looks like Nasty's replied to himself. I believe, I don't think he's completely lost his head. He was replying to somebody else here. But anyway, he was basically just cooking this, random Twitter guy, which I think that's when you know that, you're kind of mentally compromised, right? As Donny Temp would say, just click X, buddy. Just click X and get out of here for the day. But look, could Nasty leave? Could he get saved? Could Toronto poach him? Maybe. What is the team going to do? Because Boston just looked so deflated and compromised that I can't imagine that roster is very long for this world. Even Octane says, send them into the sun. Nasty is in hell. I'm going to start a GoFundMe for his buyout. This is an absolute friendship org. The fact that Snoopy's in the league is insane. Cammy being here is insane. Purge even on a team is insane. So anyway, cooking those guys. And look, based on the way that these three have played so far this season, I think Octane's take is pretty justifiable. But also, we're only a few months of COD after they came third at Champs, right? And yes, the third at Champs obviously was a massive open performance. You can run that tournament a lot of times. It's probably not going to happen that many times. But the point still stands that it's not a surprise that Snoopy, Cammy and Purge and this team are still in the league. And as I say, the matches only started up again in December. So we've only really been 2 months of actual Call of Duty being played from what happened at Champs. And obviously the World Cup after that wasn't as strong. But yeah, it's been pretty shambolic as of late. Major 1 wasn't good by any means, and now it's only getting worse. So yeah, strong words from Octane, harsh words, probably fair, at least on recent evidence. We'll see what happens next in terms of that roster. Of course, big questions on what they might do. I think I've been a proponent for some time that Boston should look at getting Renegade. I've thought that for a little while. But I do think that if Nasty stays and they need something else, Renegade, bit of leadership, it could make, maybe not leadership precisely, because Renegade's still new to COD, but the point is that he's been around doing things for a long time in the competitive space, in Halo, world champion, right? So, definitely a player. I'd be shocked if Renegade doesn't get signed before the end of the year, to be honest, especially now that Nium's come into the league and is looking pretty good, and Kips has been impressing on Toronto. That's pretty much the Huntsman team. Some other names as well. There's been talk about QK, very impressive Saudi player. There's, he's still on the Falcons Academy. There have been some questions on whether he was going to get signed even earlier on in the season. But, well, Cloud9 wanted him, but he said no, which is understandable. He's probably going to get a better opportunity at some point. But again, Boston a few weeks ago were like, okay, if Boston were to give you an offer, looks like a pretty compelling opportunity. Now, with their recent struggles, all of a sudden you might even be second guessing it based on what happens with the rest of that roster. The other thing that's worth talking about is just the state of the COD League in general. We know that there's been quite a bit of drama lately. Certainly, we talked about the maps that never changed, the meta, which is super static and stale as far as I'm concerned, and some of these issues with GAs and other things that we have in the Pro League right now. BenJ isn't very happy about it, and he's been on this hill for a long time on spinning up some sort of competitive committee that would deal with the problems. They've not done it yet. BenJ says they've got to take some damn responsibility. He also says, could we change up the matches? Because these matches are predetermined before the season even begins. These are the games of the upcoming week. weekends. And look, it's not a great weekend by any means. The Sunday is, I think, pretty dead. The Saturday's pretty good. The Friday's pretty dead, right? So, like, a lot of these matches aren't great. Before you go into the season, you don't really know. You don't know how good the teams are going to be. So when you're putting together this schedule, again, this shouldn't even be the format. We'll see some thoughts on that here in a second. Actually, Okis gives his take on that. But by the time you get to them, you start to realize, hang on, most of these matches are just not interesting at all. So is there an option to maybe flex some of these games around, change when and where they are happening to make things more interesting? Benjay basically says, look, the viewers aren't going to be happy with this because some of these days are snoozers. They need to look about flexing some of the matches, so at least if a match day looks terrible, you can swap it with another game to at least make it more compelling. They never do that. The teams wouldn't be happy about it because why would they be happy about something like that? But Ben's point is, like, just suck it up and try and make these games a little bit more interesting because some of the days right now are pretty dead. It is frustrating that having come off a great tournament in Dallas, we are saddled with weeks of online qualifiers, but I think in many respects it could open the eyes of some of the newer fans especially, and really the scene in general, to be like, damn, do we really need all these games week after week forever? Okis says something that I've been promoting for some time, and it's like, look, instead of doing all these matches every weekend, we just run a tournament. We run an online tournament, 12-team tournament. I mean, ideally, I'd want it to be a 16 tournament or 16 team with some of the challengers teams, or maybe even more. You know, back in the day, the 2Ks were open tournaments. The top teams had to play from pretty much the very first rounds, at least from round 3, to even make it through. That's not going to happen in the current structure. My concern about a 12-team tournament is that the worst teams will just play once to a top seed and lose again, and that's like all they ever get to do, right? Like if you're the bottom seed in the league and you're playing a tournament every week, like an online, basically a minor tournament. So like the theory goes, and this is I would actually prefer this, but I do see issues. Every weekend you run a minor tournament, as we've seen in recent, last year. We're going to see more during Major 3, Major 4 this year as well. And there's a champion. It creates much better storylines, certainly, and you get to see the best teams play. But the reason why they don't like to do that is because that, at least historically, every team has paid their entry fee, which has now been refunded, so it doesn't matter. But every team has paid their entry fee, so we need to make sure they're getting equal screen time, and therefore they need to play all the league matches, and it's super dead. And it is. But if you are, as I say, one of the weaker seeds, Cloud9 as the, let's say, 12th seed, they would turn up every week and they would play like the theoretical loser of the 4th and 5th seed, and they would just get slammed every week by the same teams. And then like they would never really get to play anyone that they could potentially beat or to improve. So I see some issues in that sense, but I think Okis is not wrong that this would be a far more compelling potential format. But let's talk about some of the developments at OpTic, because it's not the only problem in the league that has been discussed today. Merc obviously had a phenomenal series yesterday, and this 1v3 still kind of blows my mind, really. Yeah, obviously Cloud9 bottled it, but there's just something about Mercules when you see him on the map that, like, this guy is just, I don't know, he just makes you break. I don't know what it is. You can't kill this guy. The actual crazy thing to me is that when he started out in the Pro League, so last year, Black Ops 6, Major 3, Major 4, champs, and the World Cup even, but like, these are his search and destroy numbers. He started off really well. Like, his search and destroy average across these 3 was like near enough a 1.15, something in that kind of ballpark. Very impressive numbers. It got better at champs. It then got better again at the World Cup. And you're thinking, okay, like, Merc, surely it can't get any better. And then this season starts out. He has a 1.52 in stage 1 in the qualifiers. He has a 1.42 at the major. And you're thinking, wow, that's surely got to be the best he can possibly manage over a stint of matches. And after playing 4 games, I mean, this will go down. Surely can't keep it that high. But, don't put anything past this kid, it seems. The Wonder Kids, the anti-cheat, the Legacy Saver, whatever you want to say. But he's got a 1.73. It's just absurd, right? Like, we talked a lot during stage 1 about, like, wow, Merc, his search destroy KD is so high. Like, how is he doing this? And then he starts out stage 2 and it's even better. So, pretty remarkable. But Dashy gives his thoughts on another key controversy, and that is involving the matches right now and the servers that they are playing on.
Because again, the league refuses to spin up a competitive committee that would deal with all these issues. Instead, they stick their head in the sand so they can blame the developers, they can blame the players. They got to take some fucking responsibility for their league, bro, on the competitive topics. I don't know what to say. There's just so much better
I'm gonna be honest,
processing
bro.
now.
You're smart as hell, man.
COD is just a tournament esport. Always has been, bro. That's why you can't take one match serious. Something can fucking just happen, bro. Like there's fluky shit can happen in a Call of Duty best of 5. But over the course of a tournament, like the better teams always come out on top. Like playing fucking one match. I don't give a fuck about one match. Even if a team gets upset, it's one fucking match. I want to see what happens over a double elimination group play tournament.
The tournament format and embrace multiple matches at the same time. There's too many people.
I don't know why the league does that. Like, if you're actually, they reward or they like fucking favor the teams that
might as well just play host wars at this point. Like,
if you're all in one facility and you're playing a team that's like scattered all over the U.S., like you're actually at a disadvantage. They're just gonna favor them like every time.
I'm getting no rank. My irons don't exist.
Let's say if there's a server map that's best for like, let's say there's 7 people in Texas, but there's 1 person in Cali. Like the server is gonna favor the guy in Cali basically. Because like, even if like,
so this is a problem for a couple of reasons. Of course, the league wants it to be fair, right? Wherever the teams are based, they try to find a server which on average creates the best average ping for the teams. So theoretically, if you've got a team in a facility and you're playing on a, I don't know, Denver server or something, and you're playing out of Texas, there will be a certain ping to that server. But then the other players that may be based in different locations, they will have pings that ideally will average out to be roughly similar. I'm guessing they're still using the ping tool, the ping equalization tool, which is said to add latency to a team that has slightly less, so it makes it fair. The pros don't believe that that really works. Some pros think that it literally just changed the number on the screen rather than actually doing anything. Others think that it did something, but it was actually made it worse, right? Because, you know, the people don't really believe that this tool is accurate in, say, adding 12 ping to a person's character into the server. That was always a conversation that was had. Now, ideally, if we go back to LAN for everything, which is probably not going to happen anytime soon, but it is what it is, then it won't be a massive conversation point. But I do get Dashy's take here, because if you're in a facility, let's say you're pinging, all of you are pinging 50 to a server, right? 40, 50. And that was the talk yesterday from Pred, that they played Ravens and they were playing on a server where they had 50 ping. And all of them had 50 ping. Now, the other team, presumably, also had 200 ping when you add it together. At least that's what the league tries to make happen. But it's possible that because they're not in a facility, 1 or 2 of those players have like 80, 90 ping, and then the others have like 10 or 20. And that means that the players with the higher ping, yeah, they're at a disadvantage. But also sometimes the higher ping you have, it's not fun to play against, because that player can be rubber banding a little bit. And actually, it can, you know, it's just a strange environment to play in when you've got some guys on much higher ping than others. And then you've got 1 or 2 players literally sitting on the server and potentially cooking as a result. So the argument, I guess, is, and it might be a fair one, that even if both teams have the same total ping, it actually might still be an advantage for the team that's not in the facility, because the variability gives them an edge, one might argue. Now, I'd want to rely on someone who really deals with this stuff day in, day out and is an absolute expert in these type of behaviors to really give better comment, but it's pretty clear that it doesn't appear to be a disadvantage. Like, Dashy thinks it's an advantage to the team not in a facility. Other players, I'm sure, would agree, certainly ones that are in facilities. Those that are in the facility will say, no, that's not true. It's the other way around, I'm sure. But whatever you think about it, unfortunately, it encourages teams to do this, right? And I'm not saying this is exactly how the league should decide things, but I think it is relevant that by this scenario, trying to make sure it's all equal and putting teams in a facility at arguably a disadvantage, it encourages teams like Cloud9, teams like Ravens, among others, to say, well, why, you know, Surge, why would we spend money on a facility for the team when we're going to get the same, if not better results playing remotely? If there were different decisions and those not at a facility were as a result at a substantial disadvantage, then it would encourage the league and the teams to actually commit to the product and commit to the success of the league. Right now, they're arguably encouraging the opposite with a load of online play and the way that they manage things. That's the bottom line. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.